NFL free agency began today. I want to give a letter grade for some of the big moves that happened, talk about them a little bit and what it means for the team and also what they're getting in that player. So I'm really going to try to go over the big signings. If you guys want a part 2 of this to go over some of the other smaller ones, I can do that. But the first one I want to talk about is Eagles and Titans former safety Kevin Byard signing a 2-year deal with the Chicago Bears. Schefter does not have the details of the contract in his tweet, but I think it was around a 2-year, $15 million deal. And Byard, who is over 30 years old, you don't want to have him on a long-term deal, but I think for 2 years he's still going to be a fairly good player, top echelon safety. I do like that addition for the Bears. I think it is pretty good value when you see the safety market and what other safeties have got, which we'll go over in a little bit. But I think this is around an A- signing when you take into account the player and the value and what he's going to bring to that Bears secondary. I guess quickly we'll go over Baker Mayfield. He signed a 3-year, $100 million deal with the Buccaneers, but only 50 of it was guaranteed. So it really could just be a 2-year deal, $25 million guaranteed each season, and then that's kind of it. I personally do like this deal. I know some people were pushing back against it and saying, man, I think this is kind of similar to the Daniel Jones contract, but he's getting less guaranteed money than that, and the Bucs can move on after 2 seasons if they do not like the direction that Baker is kind of moving the team in. And they're bringing back Mike Evans. Antoine Winfield is back as well. They're kind of running back the same team and seeing if they can kind of recapture that same magic they had last year, maybe go on a playoff run. So for the Buccaneers, we're getting a solid veteran. I don't think they're going to find anybody better than Baker on the market this free agency for a pretty nice contract. I think I'd give it a B+, just due to the value of what Baker brought last year and just finding a solid quarterback option for the next couple of seasons. Now, Russell Wilson to the Steelers. I did expect this after all the news the past week or so about, Russ really taking a minimum contract, looking for a new team that he could kind of come in, compete with, maybe even start for. And the Steelers made sense because they do not have a ton of cap space. Kenny Pickett needs some competition. He's not going to be their long-term answer, I would assume, especially after making this move. The organization is kind of saying, hey, we don't really fully believe in Pickett being our long-term answer. We're going to bring in a guy who can start right away and be a fairly good option for us. And that appeared to be Russell Wilson. And they also don't have a draft pick to take one of the top quarterbacks in this class. They were kind of stuck in finding a quarterback upgrade. I mean, they could have brought back Mason Rudolph, but I think for right now, Russell Wilson is probably their best option and route to have an upgraded quarterback. And so I actually do kind of like this move for the Steelers. I'd give it around a B. Quickly, he did not sign anywhere yet, but T. Higgins, he did request a trade from the Cincinnati Bengals, and I do expect him to be traded. I posted a video about a month ago or a few weeks ago, basically saying how I could see the Bengals franchise tagging Higgins, but I do not see him signing a long-term deal with the team. They have to pay Jamar Chase. They already have Joe Burrow on a huge contract. It just does not make financial sense. I don't even think they have enough money to pay him $20-25 million, which he will get from some team that will trade for him. So the Panthers, the Titans, really any team that has a young quarterback are in the market for T. Higgins. I expect him to be traded probably before the draft, but we could see something similar to like an A.J. Brown trade, where Brown was traded on the day of the draft. We could probably see that again with T. Higgins for, maybe a 2nd-round pick, something like that. Landon Dickerson re-signed with the Eagles on a fairly big contract, a 4-year deal worth around $50 million. Dickerson is one of the best up-and-coming guards in football, and he's still fairly young. And when you lose your Hall of Fame center in Jason Kelce, you really need to lock in, one of your other better players on the interior, and that is Landon Dickerson. So I actually do like this move. I'd give it a B+. The Bills re-signed Dion Dawkins to a 3-year deal with around $60 million. It's actually kind of funny because he sent out a tweet basically saying his goodbyes almost. It was like a troll tweet. Faked everybody out, but he's actually signing an extension with the Bills. He's going to be the 4th highest paid tackle in the league. He's been a perennial Pro Bowl. I do like this deal. I think it's also going to push some cap down the road a little bit, so the Bills are going to free up some cap space. I like the signing for the Bills, locking up one of the cornerstones of their offense. I'd give it an A. DeAndre Swift went to the Chicago Bears for a 3-year, $24 million deal, and I don't really love this, but I do see the vision for the Bears just wanting to surround Caleb Williams with as much weapons as they can get. Swift had a good season last year for the Eagles, but I still think he's an above average running back and nothing super special. And when you look at what other running backs got, which wasn't much more than Swift and Pollard and Saquon Barkley, I don't know if I love this price tag for him, so I'd probably give this a C. Again, I do get the move, but I just think there's better value out there. And they even have Roschon Johnson, who they drafted last year. I don't know about investing this much into an above average, maybe like a top 15 running back, but not necessarily a top 10 one. Jonathan Greenard of the Texans signed with the Vikings on a 4-year, $76 million deal, $42 million guaranteed, a massive contract. But Greenard had a great season last year, 12.5 sacks for the Texans. And I remember last free agent cycle, he was seen as like a really nice bargain veteran that could really emerge and become a really nice pass rusher, and that's exactly what he did. And for the Vikings, who are going to be losing Danielle Hunter, this is a good player to replace him, come in a little bit cheaper, also younger, and he's probably going to have around similar production in Brian Flores' scheme. I would give this a B+. And this is exactly what I was talking about. The Titans gave Pollard a 3-year, $24 million deal, essentially exactly what DeAndre Swift got. I think Tony Pollard is better. He's kind of like a better version of DeAndre Swift. And for the Titans, I would give this deal a B-. I don't think it's a huge overpay or anything, but I do like Tyjae Spears, and he's also a very similar player to Tony Pollard. They're kind of finesse, explosive running backs who can also be really big contributors in the passing game. Maybe Callahan, their new head coach, will incorporate both of them to be pretty big parts of the offense. But I was looking forward to Tyjae Spears being the bell cow of that offense because he really impressed me towards the end of last season. And I'm a little bit biased because he is a part of my dynasty fantasy team, but I just feel like the Titans essentially just paid $24 million for a player they already had. One of the bigger signings of the day was Christian Wilkins signing a 4-year, $110 million deal with $84.75 million guaranteed with the Raiders. I think this is a good signing. I would give it a B, but it's nothing super special. Wilkins is going to make around $27 million a year, which is more than Quinnen Williams and right around the ballpark of like Chris Jones, Aaron Donald. I don't think he's anywhere close to that caliber of a player. I think Wilkins is a borderline Pro Bowl player, probably a top 10 defensive tackle, but towards the end of that top 10. The Raiders definitely overpaid, but that kind of is what free agency is. And Wilkins is a really good player. Pairing him up now with Max Crosby on the defensive line should be pretty fun to watch. The Jags gave Gabe Davis a 3-year, $39 million deal, and there was actually a lot of pushback about this on Twitter, but I actually didn't really mind this too much. At this point, I kind of view Davis and Ridley in a similar lens. I don't think they're that far off in terms of what they can provide for an offense. And so this definitely means that Calvin Ridley is going to be playing somewhere else next year, and Gabe Davis is just going to come in, probably be the wide receiver 2 behind Christian Kirk. Just be the deep threat for Trevor Lawrence. But I'd probably give this a C+. I think Gabe Davis is a fine wide receiver. $40 million worth. I don't know about that. And with how deep the draft is with wide receivers, you probably could get somebody at least comparable to him in the later rounds. The first splash for the Eagles in free agency was signing Bryce Huff to a 3-year, $51 million deal. And I'm actually going to give this an A. Huff has been one of the best pure pass rushers. He's not really a run stopper, but if you put him in key situations, third downs, he's going to come in and be one of the best pass rushers in the sport. And $17 million a year for that is not too expensive. Hassan Reddick, though, is probably on the move. Maybe even Josh Sweat. Both of them have been involved in some trade talks. So he's definitely going to step in now and be their perennial pass rusher. And the Eagles do a great job of developing these guys. I mean, they did it with Reddick. They did it with Sweat. But I think Huff is going to be that next guy that really steps in and has a huge season. The second huge Eagles move was signing Saquon Barkley to a 3-year deal worth around $46 million and $26 million guaranteed. Fairly good deal for Saquon, as Adam Schefter does mention that he did beat the franchise tag number, which would have been around $16 million. I'm going to give this move a B+. I'm not huge into paying running backs, but this is not a ton of money. And you saw what DeAndre Swift got. I think Saquon Barkley is a much better player than him. Now you have to worry about Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts in the backfield. That's going to be pretty fun to watch. Kirk Cousins also got a massive deal, 4 years, $180 million and $100 million guaranteed from the Atlanta Falcons. I thought Kirk was going to get a 2 or 3 year deal, but 4 years is a little bit wild. If you think about it in guaranteed money, it could just be like a 3-year, $33 million a season, which is not too bad. I know a lot of people just see the fine print of $180 million and just kind of freak out over that. But you really just need to look at the guaranteed money, $100 million. That's really just going to be $33 million a season. And for Kirk Cousins, who I think is a top 10 quarterback, at least top 12, that's going to be good for the Falcons, who desperately need a quarterback. And last year, if they had a legit quarterback, if they had Kirk Cousins, they're hosting a playoff game. They might even won a playoff game because they would have faced off against the Eagles. I think the Falcons are looking to do that again this year. I think they're going to be favorites in the NFC South now with Kirk. Xavier McKinney signed a huge deal with the Green Bay Packers, probably going to be the highest paid safety on the market this free agency. I would give this a B+. It's a pretty rich contract for a safety, but Xavier McKinney is a great playmaker. He's still young. So I think the Packers viewed him as a future part of their young core because he's still only around like 25 years old. They could have gone out and got somebody like an Eddie Jackson or a Justin Simmons to fill their void at safety, but those guys are a little bit older, so now they're going to get somebody in their prime, be able to develop with their new look defense. I like the deal. The Carolina Panthers gave Robert Hunt a 5-year, $100 million deal that includes $63 million guaranteed. Now, this is a massive overpay, but when you are surrounding your younger and smaller quarterback and Bryce Young with offensive line help, I think anytime you do that, it's a fairly good move. I'd give it a B- just because of the amount of money that he will be making. And right guard is probably one of the more expendable positions in the sport. I think Hunt is an above average guard. I don't think he's quite Pro Bowl level. Maybe he can reach that with the Panthers if he can develop a little bit more, but he's definitely going to be a massive upgrade for the Panthers' interior offensive line Now they can focus on wide receiver in the draft. Packers also signed two-time Pro Bowl running back Josh Jacobs to a 4-year, $48 million deal. The guaranteed money is still not reported. I do kind of want to see that because I do not think he will be making $12 million a season. But I'm going to be fairly interested in this fit for the Packers offense because they do run an outside zone running scheme. You know, that's what Aaron Jones was super good at, who they're cutting, moving on from, and bringing in Josh Jacobs to replace him. I feel like Jacobs is a little bit better in between the tackles. Maybe they're trying to make their run game a little bit more physical, but I thought that's what they had AJ Dillon for. I don't really know exactly the Packers' plan behind this and how they're going to try to use Jacobs. And I would give this move a C. I think Jacobs and Jones are pretty comparable players in terms of their ability. I do realize that Jacobs is younger, but he has also dealt with a lot of injuries. I know Aaron Jones missed some games last year, but Jacobs missed a lot as well. And really outside of one season, Jacobs has not been able to stay healthy. Maybe this will look a little bit better down the line, but for right now, I'm not a huge fan of this. Geno Stone signed to the Bengals on a 2-year, $15 million deal. I really like this deal for them. He had 7 interceptions last year, and they kind of need somebody to fill in for Jesse Bates. They really missed his presence last year on defense. Obviously, I don't think Geno Stone is up to that level, but he's a playmaker in the back end of their defense. I'm going to give this an A. I think this is a really nice contract for an up-and-coming safety who's still young. It can also have a big impact. One that I almost skipped over is Michael Pittman Jr. agreeing on a 3-year, $70 million deal with 46 guaranteed with the Colts. I really like this deal for them. Again, if you just take into account the guaranteed money, which is around $15 million a season for an upper echelon wide receiver who I still think has a chance to develop. Take another step with Anthony Richardson at the helm next season. I would give this a B+. They replace the franchise tag with a long-term deal, lock up a really nice young receiver. And the last move I want to talk about in this video is Gus Edwards signing a 2-year deal with the Los Angeles Chargers. And the Chargers GM now, Greg Ortiz, he was an assistant in Baltimore for many, many years, so he has a connection to Edwards in that way as well. We do not know the money, but now the Chargers are going to get a physical bruising back, which Jim Harbaugh loves to have on his offenses. In terms of just fit, I would give this move an A. It's probably around a $10 to $12 million deal, which I still think is a pretty good price for Gus Edwards, who's one of the best bruising backs in the league. But that is my recap on some of the bigger deals today and what grade I would give some of them. Let me know in the comment section down below. What was the most surprising deal that you saw today and what you expect to see the rest of the week? I know this isn't a typical video for me on this channel, not as much production value as I usually have, but I just want to do a quick sit down video talking about all these free agents before even more signings happen. But if you did enjoy the video, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new. If you want a part 2 of this, let me know. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in my next one.